The warship floated silently in the emptiness of space, a massive silhouette against the cold, distant stars. Its hull was cracked and scorched, streaks of blue energy leaking from gashes in the metal as if the ship itself was bleeding. Smoke and sparks drifted out from the broken vents, and the soundless creak of its strained frame seemed to echo through the void. Captain Jax Calder had seen many strange things in his life as a scavenger and repairman, but this ship was unlike anything he had ever encountered. It wasn't just damaged. It carried a sense of power, a quiet authority even in its ruined state. Its enormous size and alien design made it look more like a war god than a vessel, and yet it floated helplessly, abandoned and vulnerable. The dead zone around the Helix Rift was notorious for hiding danger. Planets were far away, rescue was impossible, and the space itself seemed to swallow ships whole. Scavengers and pirates roamed freely, preying on any vessel unlucky enough to drift through. But Jax's radar had picked up the ship long before he could see it with the naked eye, and something about the readings had made him stop in his tracks. His heart pounded with both fear and excitement, because he knew that while the ship was alien and deadly, it was also repairable, and that meant opportunity. Jax ran a hand over the worn control panel of his own ship. The patchwork, a vessel held together by welded plates, stolen electronics, and pure stubbornness. Mira, his engineer and close friend, stood beside him, scanning the alien vessel's readings with her portable analyzer. The signals were strange, flickering in ways human technology could barely interpret. Jax did not need to know the details. He had fixed countless broken things, from engines to communication arrays, and he understood one simple rule: everything, no matter how advanced, broke in ways that could be mended with logic, creativity, and determination. "We'll need a boarding team," he said finally, his voice low but steady. Mira nodded, already checking the integrity of their tools and protective suits. Every second mattered. If the Car Dominion or any other scavenger found this vessel first, they would tear it apart for scraps or worse. Leave no survivors. They approached the alien warship carefully, cutting through the hull with a plasma torch. The metal gave way with a hiss, revealing the interior. The corridors inside were otherworldly, filled with glowing crystal-like panels and floating lights that hovered as if defying gravity. Sections of the deck flickered between normal gravity and weightlessness, making every step uncertain. The air was thin and tinged with a strange scent, almost metallic, but with a faint sweetness that reminded Mira of ozone. As they moved deeper, the full extent of the destruction became clear. Most of the crew were gone, lying motionless in pools of strange, luminescent blood. Their forms were unlike anything human, tall and lithe, with skin that shimmered faintly gold and eyes that glowed like stars. Some had 4 eyes, others none at all, and their armor was torn in jagged slices. The ship was alive in some sense, but broken, screaming silently for repair. It was in the command chamber that they found her. She was sprawled across the floor, one arm draped over the remains of her chair, and her breathing shallow. Her armor was shattered, revealing more of her unusual skin, and the faint glow of internal markings traced patterns across her shoulders. Despite her injuries, there was a nobility to her presence, a sense that she was someone of great importance. Jax and Mira exchanged a quick glance. They had no idea who she was, no understanding of her status, no knowledge of the symbols that adorned her uniform. All they knew was that if they did not act quickly, she would die. Without hesitation, Jax began assessing the damage to the ship, while Mira worked to stabilize the woman's condition, using portable medkits and basic alien medical tools they had scavenged. Time was critical. Every flicker of the ship's failing systems was a countdown. Jax moved through the control panels and shattered consoles. his hands steady as he bypassed fried circuits and rerouted power using the materials available. Copper wires, human code, improvised relays, all things that would never have belonged in a vessel of this kind, were connected and fused with alien technology. Mayra followed his lead, using instinct and observation to piece together a makeshift life support system for the princess and bring some functionality back to the ship's failing core. Hours passed, each moment filled with tension as the ship shuddered violently, releasing trapped energy in sudden bursts. Sparks flew. The air hummed with electricity. Jox's hands were scorched in places, his suit smeared with alien blood and grime, but he never stopped. He had faced countless dangers, from space storms to pirate attacks, and this was simply another problem to solve. As the final systems flickered back to life, lights returned to the corridors, and the shield stabilized enough to hold minor damage. The princess stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, revealing the 4 radiant orbs that reflected the dim glow of the ship's interior. She tried to rise but collapsed back onto the floor, exhausted. In a voice weak but commanding, she spoke, her words foreign but understandable. She identified herself as Princess Calith Virex, heir to the Virex dominion, a name that carried weight. Jox did not yet understand. He nodded, offering no explanation, no reaction. In his mind, titles were meaningless. He had repaired a dying ship. He had saved a life. That was all that mattered. Beyond the walls of the broken warship, space itself was alive with danger. Sensors picked up movement. An approaching fleet, ships dark and lethal, their intentions unmistakable. The Car Dominion had come. They were slavers, conquerors, and ruthless hunters of the galaxy, and they had tracked the princess across countless systems. Their fleet far outnumbered Jox's team, and their weapons could tear the patchwork apart without a thought. Mayra whispered that they had no chance in a direct fight, but Jox only smiled faintly. He did not rely on chance or power alone. Human ingenuity, adaptability, and courage had gotten them this far. As he prepared the ship for whatever was coming, he knew that their survival would depend not on who had the biggest fleet or the deadliest weapons, but on the stubborn refusal to give up, the cleverness to turn weakness into strength, and the willingness to fight against impossible odds. The black shapes of the car fleet appeared on the sensors like knives in the void, sleek and deadly, moving with terrifying precision. Each ship bristled with weapons, their hulls dark and menacing, and their presence sent a chill through the repaired warship. Captain Jax Calder had faced danger before, but nothing like this. The Car were not ordinary enemies. They were slavers and conquerors, feared across multiple star systems, and they had hunted Princess Calith for reasons Jax only partially understood. Their goal was to capture her, to take the immense wealth, technology, and fleets she commanded as the heir to the Virex dominion. Yet here they were, hundreds of heavily armed vessels surrounding the lone, battered ship he had fixed with nothing but scraps, human ingenuity, and sheer stubbornness. Jox knew there was no way to fight them head-on. The princess's warship was repaired, yes, but it was nothing compared to the disciplined Car armada. Mayra, scanning the enemy movements, whispered in awe and fear, warning that their chances of survival were almost zero. Jox did not answer. He did not need to. He could see what needed to be done. They would not outgun these enemies. They would outthink them. Using every trick he had learned in years of surviving on the edges of space, Jox turned the ship's systems to his advantage. The human mind thrived on improvisation, on taking what was broken and making it into something useful. He rigged explosive traps in the corridors, set up false power surges to lure boarding parties into deadly zones, and manipulated gravity to confuse enemies as they tried to move through the ship. Mayra worked alongside him, adapting alien technology to human understanding, turning shields and weapons into tools that could create chaos rather than just defense. The princess, weak and recovering from her injuries, watched them in amazement, unable to comprehend fully how two humans, outsiders in her world, could make a dying warship into a deadly weapon. She had known armies, generals, and technology, yet these humans, with nothing but instinct, courage, and stubbornness, were already outmaneuvering the car before a single shot had been fired. When the first boarding ships arrived, the fight turned brutal and personal. Car soldiers, taller and stronger than humans, with sharp claws and armored suits, moved through the corridors like predators. They expected to face fear and submission. Instead, they met ingenuity and ferocity. Jax ambushed one enormous warrior in a maintenance bay using the ship's own systems against him. He guided the enemy into a venting chamber and sealed it just in time to expose the soldier to the vacuum of space. Mira used makeshift weapons, plasma torches, and improvised explosives, venting corridors and collapsing sections of the deck to block the enemy's advance. Every move they made was dangerous, but each risk paid off. The humans were small, fragile, and outmatched, yet their minds turned weakness into advantage. Princess Calith realized for the first time that humans were not just survivors. They were something more. They adapted, learned, and turned situations that should have been hopeless into opportunities. In a brief moment of respite, she whispered in awe that these creatures, these fragile humans, were not soldiers in any formal sense, yet they were proving themselves superior in cunning and courage. Jax simply nodded, his focus never leaving the sensors and panels as he continued to manipulate the ship. Knowing that the enemy's every expectation of weakness could be turned against them, the car fleet was relentless. They opened fire with devastating weapons, and the repaired warship shook under the assault. Hull plates warped, lights flickered, and alarms screamed as energy surged through circuits that had been patched together with human hands. The humans worked tirelessly, rerouting power, repairing shields on the fly, and improvising defenses no one in the galaxy could have predicted. It became clear that raw firepower alone would not determine the battle. Jax made a risky decision. He would push the ship's core beyond its safe limits, overloading it in a way that could either destroy the warship or give them the only chance to escape. He turned to Princess Calith, asking if the ship was capable of making a quantum jump through the helix rift. She hesitated, warning that the jump might tear the vessel apart, yet there was no choice. The car fleet was closing in, and time had run out. The humans prepared, setting the ship for the jump, their hands steady, their nerves taut, knowing that this single move would decide life or death. When the ship finally leapt, the stars around them twisted, space itself bending and stretching as they hurtled through the helix rift. The physics inside the rift were chaotic, violent, and unpredictable. Yet Jax's improvisations with alien and human technology stabilized the ship enough to survive. The car fleet had followed them, unaware that the rift was not a mere corridor, but a trap of nature itself. Ships that relied on rigid calculations and technology were torn apart by the unpredictable currents of space, while the humans, who had adapted in real time, moved through it alive. When the jump was complete, the enemy fleet had suffered devastating losses. Many ships were destroyed outright, their hulls torn apart by the rift, while the survivors scattered in panic. Silence fell in the void, broken only by the creaking and hum of the repaired warship. The princess, still weak but now upright, could hardly believe what had happened. Her eyes, 4 radiant suns, looked at the humans in astonishment. She realized that her life had been saved not by her royal guards, her vast fleets, or her powerful technology, but by the courage, intelligence, and adaptability of 2 humans who had acted when others would have frozen in fear. She admitted, almost in disbelief, that humans were extraordinary. They had no formal training for such combat, yet they had turned desperation into victory. Jocks, ever modest, simply replied that they had adapted because they had no choice. Survival had demanded cleverness, bravery, and decisive action. The galaxy, he seemed to imply, could take note. Humans might not have the largest fleets, the most powerful weapons, or the most wealth. But they had one thing that even the most advanced civilizations sometimes lacked: the ability to face the impossible. Think quickly and fight back when no one else could. As they drifted into relative safety, Princess Keleth understood that these humans, who had repaired her nearly dead warship with scraps and ingenuity, had done something no one had ever expected. They had turned a hopeless situation into triumph, demonstrating a kind of strength that could not be measured in weapons, soldiers, or gold. Jocks and Myra had shown that human courage, creativity, and stubbornness were forces to be reckoned with. The Card Dominion had underestimated them, and that mistake had nearly cost the enemy fleet its entire presence in the sector. For the first time in her life, the princess bowed her head, not in fear, but in awe of the being she had once considered insignificant. She had survived not because she was royalty, but because humanity refused to kneel, refused to accept weakness, and refused to surrender, even when the odds were impossibly against them. The lesson was clear. The galaxy had underestimated humans for too long, and anyone who dismissed them now did so at their peril. The repaired warship, with its patched hull and improvised systems, was a testament to human ingenuity and determination. Its survival, against impossible odds, was proof that when pushed, humans could achieve what no alien race might expect. And as the stars stretched past the windows of the ship, Jocks and Myra prepared for what was next. Knowing that the universe would not easily forget the day humans had turned desperation into a weapon, cunning into a shield, and survival into an unstoppable force. Days passed after the harrowing escape through the Helix Rift, and the repaired warship drifted cautiously through the quieter sectors of space. Its hull scarred but alive, its systems still patched together with human ingenuity. Captain Jocks Calder and Myra worked tirelessly to keep everything running, their hands and minds never idle, knowing that the calm was temporary. They could feel the tension in the air even before the first signal appeared on the sensors. The Varex fleet, thousands of ships strong, was approaching, their golden hulls gleaming like the light of a dozen suns, a magnificent show of power and authority. For Jocks and Myra, this was a moment of uncertainty. They had survived pirates, slavers, and the most dangerous sector of space, but the Varex fleet represented a different kind of danger. These were not enemies, yet they were unfamiliar, powerful, and capable of destroying anyone who displeased them. As the first ships came into view, Jocks felt a weight of responsibility heavier than ever before. Princess Keleth had survived because of them, yet now they stood before a fleet that could crush them without hesitation. They prepared for the worst, readying defenses and calculating every possible escape route, knowing that even the slightest mistake could be fatal. Despite the danger, there was a strange sense of anticipation. For the first time, the humans were about to meet allies on a scale they had never imagined. And yet the same instincts that had kept them alive through battles in space, storms kept them alert and cautious. When the Varex fleet surrounded the repaired warship, an extraordinary moment unfolded. The ships, bristling with weaponry and shields that could obliterate an entire planet, held their positions, scanning the vessel carefully. Jocks had expected commands to fire, to inspect, to arrest them as trespassers in a galaxy far beyond human reach. Instead, Princess Keleth's voice echoed over the communications channels, firm and commanding, ordering her fleet to stand down. "Do not fire," she said, and her words carried authority so absolute that even the most cautious captains obeyed immediately. She stepped forward, moving closer to the humans through the reinforced communication link, and spoke directly to them, acknowledging the incredible courage and skill that had saved her life and her ship. For the first time, the scale of what Jox and Mira had accomplished became clear. They had faced near certain death, defeated a fleet far larger than any they had encountered, and preserved the life of a being whose power and wealth dwarfed anything humanity had ever known. The princess revealed her amazement at their actions, noting that while her people measured worth in wealth, power, and status, the humans had shown a different metric: effort, ingenuity, and the courage to act when action was the only option. Jox, ever modest, shrugged, reminding her that they had done only what was necessary to survive, and that survival often required bending rules, thinking fast, and acting without hesitation. Mira, exhausted but proud, nodded in agreement. In that moment, the humans realized something remarkable. The galaxy was no longer indifferent to them. Their actions had left an imprint that could not be erased. Princess Calith offered rewards that were unimaginable: vast wealth, access to technology far beyond human reach, and a place among the most powerful fleets in the galaxy were all hers to give. Yet Jox and Mira, shaped by years of hardship, survival, and independence, declined the riches. They wanted only what they had always wanted: a chance to continue living on their own terms, free from the domination of any empire or king, and the assurance that their people and the patchwork would have safe passage through the stars. The princess, understanding the value of their choice, bowed in respect and gratitude. It was a rare gesture from someone of her status, a recognition that human courage and principle could rival, even surpass, the trappings of royalty. In doing so, she declared that these humans were under her protection, ensuring that no fleet, pirate, or slaver would ever dare harm them again. This act sent a clear message throughout the galaxy. Humanity could no longer be ignored, underestimated, or dismissed. Even the Car Dominion, those ruthless slavers who had once pursued the princess relentlessly, would now think twice before crossing humans. The lesson had been written in the stars. When the galaxy broke, humans fixed it, and when threatened, humans struck back with a force shaped not by wealth or advanced technology, but by adaptability, courage, and relentless ingenuity. With the Varex fleet accompanying them, humanity gained more than allies. They gained recognition, a place in the larger struggles of the galaxy, and the respect of civilizations that had once regarded humans as insignificant. The repaired warship, now stabilized and reinforced, served as a symbol of human capability and resilience. Jox and Mira worked side by side with Princess Calith's engineers, sharing knowledge and learning from alien technology while offering their own human methods of improvisation and repair. This collaboration marked a turning point, not just for the humans themselves, but for interstellar relations in general. The Car Dominion, whose arrogance and brutality had once seemed unstoppable, had now suffered a defeat they could not ignore. It became clear that humans could not be measured by the size of their fleets or the strength of their weapons alone. Their real power lay in their minds, their creativity, and their refusal to surrender even when the odds were stacked impossibly high. Throughout the fleet, alien officers whispered of the strange, unorthodox methods the humans had used, from makeshift weapons to rerouted power grids, and marveled at their ability to improvise solutions in real time under extreme stress. Jox, unaware of the full extent of the legend he was becoming, focused only on practical matters, keeping the ship running, protecting Mira, and ensuring that the princess and the humans survived the aftermath. Yet in doing so, he and Mira became living proof of the human factor, a term that would spread throughout the galaxy as a measure of respect, awe, and fear. As they traveled together with the Varex fleet, Princess Keleth often reflected on the lesson humans had taught her. Titles, wealth, and fleets could be built, bought, and conquered. Intelligence, courage, and the willingness to act in the face of impossible danger were qualities that could not be measured or predicted. The humans had proven that even the smallest crew, with nothing but determination, could change the course of a conflict and save an empire from annihilation. Their story would echo across star systems, inspiring others to see humanity not as weak or insignificant, but as adaptable, resourceful, and unbreakable. Jax, Mira, and Princess Keleth had survived, but the universe itself had shifted. Empires would think twice before dismissing humans. Pirates would hesitate before underestimating them. And in the quiet moments between battles, the humans would remind themselves of the truth they had always known. When faced with impossible odds, they did not surrender. They did not beg for mercy, and they did not run. They adapted, they fought, and they won. By the time they emerged fully from the Helix Rift and into safer space, the humans were no longer just scavengers and repairmen. They had become legends in their own right, symbols of ingenuity and resilience. The Varex fleet provided them protection, and yet Jax and Mira remained grounded, practical, and ready for whatever challenges the galaxy might throw at them next. Their adventure had begun with a broken ship and a single life in danger, but it had ended with a demonstration of the indomitable human spirit. The car had learned the hard way that humans were not to be underestimated. Princess Keleth had learned to value courage over wealth. And the galaxy had learned that when humans fix something, whether a ship, a battle, or a desperate situation, they did it with unmatched skill, determination, and heart. As stars stretched endlessly past the windows of the repaired warship, Jax looked at Mira and then at the princess. Understanding that this was only the beginning of humanity's story in a galaxy that had finally begun to respect them. They had survived the impossible, and the universe would never forget it.